and welcome to the Nat Coombs Show Week 3 preview pod coming your way, gang. And we've got none other than the brilliant Ben Isaacs in the house to get you set. We'll obviously be leading off with Rams, Bucks, Brady, Stafford, two 2-0 sides, two absolutely bona fide contenders in the NFC. Someone's got to give. Biggest game of the weekend, although it is a close call because we're going to talk Sunday Night Football as well. Packers, 49ers. We'll look at the Cowboys in a bit more detail. Ben will give us his perspective on some of the rookie quarterbacks as well and how he thinks they are faring. College football expert that he is. Incidentally, if you haven't checked it out already, latest College Days has dropped with Ben. We dropped it midweek, so it'll be there in the vault. So go and find that out. Looking at the key prospects in the college game right now that are going to be in the NFL next season. So getting you up to speed, way ahead of the curve on the big stars that will be in the NFL this time next year. But that's all to come. That's all the future. What about the here and now? Week 3 of the NFL coming your way. So let's get down to business. Benedict Isaacs, it is good to see you. The sun is shining. London is a sunny place right now, and the NFL is a sunny place right now. It is living up to the billing, living up to the hype. We're on our heads trying to work out it. I was listening to Bill Simmons getting into this with Cousin Sal on his podcast, and he put forward the argument, are there any really, really strong teams? You can make a case of fallibility for any of the contenders, right?
You absolutely can. And, you know, when we next talk college football, that's very much the theme there as well, that there's loads of really interesting teams, but there aren't a handful of teams that you can be like, oh, how does anyone beat these guys? Everyone's got their flaws. Everyone's got their strengths, and it's all, even at this early stage of the season, it's all kind of shaping up quite nicely, rather than it being that, you know, it's, who's going to beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? It's, you know,
which is interesting because
the Chiefs have problems.
Going into the season, it very much was, it's the Bucks in the NFC, the Chiefs in the AFC, and you're putting cases for the Browns, the Ravens, the Rams, but they're clear-cut favorites 2 games in. That's been torn up. I like the fact that you said there are teams that have strengths and teams that have weaknesses and flaws, just like life, Ben. Just like life.
That is true. So true.
It's a beautiful thing. Let's get into it. Rams Bucks is obviously where we're going to lead off because it is the game of the weekend. No doubt about that. With respect to the 49ers Packers, of course, Sunday Night Football. Incidentally, speaking of Sunday Night Football, Ben Isaacs, on our Edge Rush show, me and Propo, Ollie the producer, dropping Saturday mornings, getting you set for the weekends with all the edge on the action. Matilda the cat picked the Ravens last week in the standing and staring in a very strong wave of opposition to the Ravens winning that straight up. Matilda didn't blink. She picked the Ravens. This week, she has made her pick on the Edge Rush show. You'll have to go over there and listen. But
she's got great stats. That's something the community knows.
Exactly right. And this, of course, was done the scientific way, deep analysis, hours and hours of preparation to make her pick. We put a dreamy biscuit in either hand. One hand was the Bucks, one hand was the 49ers, and whichever one she went for was the pick. So you have to check out Edge Rush to find out with whether she can go 2-0 on the season, because for some reason she didn't pick the first week. Rams Bucks, game of the weekend. Stafford against Brady. Two contenders, no doubt about it, in the NFC. Two electrifying teams to watch, amongst the most enjoyable and exciting teams to watch. Although if we flip back, I should say, to last season when the two met, this was very much a Bucks team and a Bucks offense specifically, it was still trying to find its feet, right? A lot of people are billing this as the Brady revenge game because Brady didn't have a good time of it against the Rams last time out, and they pulled off the trick that those few teams that have managed to get the better of Tom Brady over the years are getting pressure up the middle in particular, getting in his face up the middle. That was their key to success, hurrying and hassling and putting him off his rhythm, which is no mean feat. So can the Rams repeat the trick this time, do you think?
They certainly can, although obviously they don't have Jared Goff now. And I don't know if they should be really worried about having the lack of Jared Goff magic to take them against the Super Bowl champions. I mean, can they cope?
Oh, poor Jared. I mean, it was inevitable he was going to become the butt of all jokes. Poor Jared Goff. I get it. It's clearly they're going to, and I'm really interested to get into the Rams offense and look at, in particular, what Stafford brings and drill down a bit more. There was a great piece on PFF by Seth Galina who said that, amongst other things, Stafford's taking the weight off his head coach's shoulders because Stafford's so much more expansive, because he's got that deep threat, because he can improvise. He's not automated in the way that Goff wasn't. McVay had to really, really choreograph to the point of certainly restrictive and to the point of absurdity. So offense, sure, no doubt, upgrade in the quarterback position and year on year. But defense is what I want to start with. Can the Rams get to Brady, get through that offensive line? Because if they can, then they have a very serious shot at this, right? But it's easier said than done.
Yeah, and the Rams had such a weird week on defense against the Colts. The Colts were moving the ball a hell of a lot and should have scored more points than they did. It was a very strange game for anyone who watched it live or has watched it back since. The Colts can feel a little bit hard done by. The Rams deserve to win, but the Rams defense didn't do a whole lot to stop the Colts a lot of the time. And the pressure that was coming from up front from the Rams was not where it should be. It was that pass rush especially was pretty good against the Bears, but not fantastic in week one. It was certainly more than good enough, but the Bears have got a terrible offensive line. The Colts have a better offensive line, certainly, and they've got Quentin Nelson, and they were able to offset a lot of the things that the Rams do. The Bucs are in the same position, and they've got a strong offensive line, and right. I'm not sure they're going to keep Tom Brady off balance like they did last season. You know, that was, like you say, that was a Bucs offense finding its feet, and it clicked in the second half of the season and became very different. And it's just carried on. This may as well have, like the two games that have happened since the start of the season for the Bucs, it feels like they could have happened in February. This is what they were doing to the playoffs. They were efficient. They're getting things done. Brady spreading it around. Brady, to no one's surprise, when there is pressure, he's completely calm.
Yeah,
I think they're going to struggle with that.
On the Brady pressure, so and this is specifically against the blitz, so note that he is the highest graded quarterback this season so far against the blitz. No surprise there, Brady. No. You know, when he can see it coming in that step, sure, but 8 touchdown passes on throws past the sticks. Second quickest average time to throw as well, which is interesting.
That surprised me a lot.
Yeah, that is. But where I'm intrigued in terms of the Bucs offensive strategy in this game is the ground game, right? So Fournette has had in the first two games of the season, 20 carries for 84 yards. Ronald Jones had even less, 10 carries for 41 yards, and no one else has had a rushing attempt, right? So it's better to say that I haven't really emphasized the run a great deal, but will that change in light of this particular defense they're up against?
I think it needs to, and I think we want to see some play action, because if they just start to get a bit too one-dimensional, and you know, we're talking about Brady and the Bucs, and it's a fantastic offense, but if you get one-dimensional against an elite tier defense that the Rams do have, the only elite tier defense that they'll have played this season, then that's not going to work. I don't think the Rams defense is going to get to Brady as much as they need to. They'll know to not blitz like crazy because he'll pick them apart. And you just look at the weapons he's got. And this is why they haven't been running the ball so much. And
why would you when you've got 11 receivers?
Exactly. Yeah. But they didn't get to a point where they were against the Falcons where they were just kind of like, okay, we're just going to hand off to Fournette and just kill the game off. They were not doing that. And
it cost them because the Falcons got back into it.
Yeah. Which, I wouldn't have expected, but I did just think they were going to milk the clock, which they didn't do successfully. The way that Brady's spreading it around, going deep, going short, doing whatever he has to do, they've negated the need for Leonard Fournette to a certain extent. And, like Leonard Fournette is a bruiser. He's a kind of a bulldozer guy who will just make those hard yards. And he's injury prone, but they're not playing him this way and not giving him as many carries in case he gets injured. Like, to be honest, they don't care. They need to use him how they need to use him. And obviously the Bucs are going to score points. They're not going to score 48. I don't think. But frankly, the worry for the Bucs, really, I mean, if I was the Bucs, I'm not that worried about what the Rams defense is going to do. As good as
You're
it is.
about your own defense.
Exactly.
Well, the ground game, of course, they've been very effective in preventing. They've only allowed, this is Tampa Bay, 115 yards on the ground. That's an average of 3 per carry, right? That's the, standout. And they had, of course, the best run D in the league last season. And Vita Vea is a beast, trademark, no doubt about it. But not so great at the other end of proceedings. Now, you've got to look at this a little bit carefully, these kind of stats, because certainly at the Atlanta game, Dallas was closer and more of a shootout, whereas they blazed out against Atlanta, and Atlanta were playing catch up, right? 684 yards through the air in the first 2 games is what they've allowed. Second worst in the league in passing defense. Now, like I say, those stats in particular can be misleading if a team is blazing into a lead and therefore the opposition is playing catch up and having to air it out to that degree, and a lot of junk time yardage in that number. Nevertheless, when you weigh that up against Stafford and what is clearly, as we opened the show, talking about a massive upgrade in the Rams passing game and the connection he's built with Cooper Kupp already, which just looks dynamo, that is going to be a massive worry, of course. The Bucs will be looking at their secondary. As Mike Carlson said on our show at the start of the week, that's the weak link, I guess, if you're trying to find one in the Bucs defense. That is something that will be fascinating to see play out with the schematic innovation of Sean McVay, getting more and more used to his shiny new toy and what he's able to do. That could get fascinating. But what about the ground game? Because Henderson's got a knock. You got Sonny Michel stepping up. Maybe they'll be able to find a bit more balance there, even against this stronger run D.
Yeah, they're going to have to, because we know what Stafford can do through the air, and we know that he can try and pick on the so-called weak link, and it is a weak link, and it is a problem because the secondary becomes, as each NFL season passes, it becomes more and more important as it becomes an even more pass heavy league. I worry about the Rams' ability to run the ball quite as much as they would need to against the Bucs, because I love this Bucs run defense, and it just shuts people down. The Cowboys pretty much gave up on it, and yes, it was a shootout, but Zeke really found it heavy sledding against the Bucs, and if he can find it difficult, then anyone can.
Are we going to see 1,200 passing yards in this game?
Oh, it's possible that it will be one of those really, really ridiculous games in terms of yardage. I don't feel it's going to be a ridiculous game in terms of points scored. I think they've both got pretty decent red zone defenses when things are on the line, and that's kind of what helped the Rams against the Colts, when the Colts seemed to kind of be able to drive down the field and then just couldn't do something, or they would force a turnover.
Is this the NFC Championship game you want to see?
I was, you know what? That is exactly what I'd been thinking. Right now that is the NFC Championship game I would want to see, but I want to see this preview first, because it could easily be that those flaws that we see are going to get magnified. My biggest surprise of this game is that it's for UK time, it's a 9:25 kickoff. This feels like, how did this huge primetime game end up in the 4:25 local time time slot? Like this, if you need an early night on Sunday,
before Stafford had moved to the Rams.
Yeah. You're like, oh, no one wants to. let's not force Goff on people. Like, Stafford is, I've been thinking a lot in the last couple of weeks about the rookie quarterbacks,
We're going to talk about him later on, of course.
Yeah. And Matt Stafford is one of those players who, if you get a chance in the off season, when you finish watching all these games, to go and watch full games of Stafford's first season with the Detroit Lions, you will learn so much. You will learn so much about the way rookie quarterbacks develop and the talent you can see while a player is also struggling and making mistakes, which he was. And he was a day one starter, and he was put in a bad position. He did not have a whole lot of talent around him. It was just, okay, get the ball to Megatron. Everything else can be a disaster. And it often was. And he eventually, by the end of the season, he was kind of keeping them in games. Matt Stafford is, because he was being kind of stuck in the kind of Detroit Lions kind of ghetto almost, and didn't get to showcase himself in prime time very often, didn't get to play in the playoffs that often. He's waited so long for this. And he was always a great teammate for everybody in Detroit. He wasn't someone who was looking to get out. He did everything he could to help them win, was like a star in the community. But my God, this move is perfect for him. This offense is perfect for him. And Cooper Kupp is more perfect for him than Megatron was back then.
Oh, that's like a big call.
I don't mean better. I just mean more like at that point when he was playing.
It's more of a sophisticated tandem in a way, isn't it? I guess because you're right. Yes. Stafford would heave it up and, okay, big arm, hell of a throw. It's not as simple as defining that as, a hurl and hope. But Megatron was so dominating that, playing jump ball, it was one dimensional. What we're already seeing, I think, with what McVay is dialing up and how those two are collaborating is range. And that's the really exciting thing. And I'm one of the things I am most excited about as this season progresses is watching this Rams offense develop, because inevitably there is going to be, I was thinking about this with Mahomes and the Chiefs and that Miami Super Bowl. We were out there all week, of course, and doing all kinds of things. And I remember we'd finished recording one of the shows, and we're recording, listeners will remember, we're recording early in the morning, right? We were on set we're recording by 7 a.m., right? I remember being in makeup, and believe me, I needed heavy dose, walking over to the hotel, where it was all set up before we get a car down to the beach set with Propo. And if we'd had a obviously hard-working, busy night, it took a while to wolf a coffee down and wake up. But I remember finishing that show, and it was a strange feeling because you're done by 7:30 in the morning. We go get brekkie. I think this was the show that J Bell was on, and we already got brekkie, and then we all kind of went our separate ways because that's how the Super Bowl works. And it's 9 a.m. The day is just starting, really. And I went over to the hotel, the ESPN hotel, holed up by the pool, and rolled my sleeves up and wrote a piece for the Times on Mahomes, right? And that, I just remember this really clearly, looking at the Andy Reid's chronology with Mike Vick, with Donovan McNabb, with working out why this was such a perfect timing. It was perfect timing, and why the stars had aligned. That you look at the offensive innovation and development and chronology of his thinking, and a quarterback with the skill set of Mahomes arriving at that time. Now, this isn't, of course, identical, but it's the same principle, I think. Much smaller sample size. McVay is much younger than Andy Reid, but the same principle. He has developed an offense and an approach, and now he's got a quarterback that can take it to the next level. I'm so excited about seeing what's going to happen this year.
Yeah, when you look at quarterbacks coming in the 2021 draft and feeling, are they a good fit for their teams? No new quarterback joined a team that was a better fit during that off season than Stafford becoming a Ram. It was just absolutely perfect. If you sat down and tried to work out, okay, where would Stafford go where he would be an instant upgrade, but also would be just the perfect fit for him with everything they're going to do schematically, the flexibility that they'll give him. Like if the Rams had the number one pick in the draft, then obviously they would have taken Trevor Lawrence. But really, beyond that, there was no better upgrade for them, because Stafford's not right at the end of his career. And in this offense, he can play for longer than he would have in Detroit. I think in Detroit, he'd have had a few more seasons, but I think we're going to see a lot more of Matt Stafford now because of this. And
well, it's better climate for starters.
It really is. He's going to keep a lot warmer.
One more on this, and then we'll move on, because I really want to get into Sunday Night Football next. But the point you make is a great one about Stafford being quite isolated or certainly marginalized in Detroit. And look, respect to Detroit fans, it's a great club, but it has been a slim pickings. I think any Lions fan listening now would be the first to admit that if Marek was around now, he would hold his hand up and say it's been slim pickings. And that's, of course, one of the fundamental distinctions when you look at the NFL compared to, say, European football, right? That a player like Stafford, if you look at his Lions trajectory, he was the number 1 overall pick, wasn't he? First round, yeah, number 1 overall pick, lands there, would play at a smaller club or a less successful club, to be maybe more accurate, in European football, and then get the move to City or to Barca or to Real 3, 4, 5 years into their career, right? That doesn't happen in the NFL. And a lot of the time, and of course, the cyclical nature and the fact that there is a parity and the egalitarian construct of teams shouldn't really dominate, and the Patriots an outlier and everything else. I get that, right? So you stick around and then you get good and the team gets good, so it doesn't really matter. But you do get these situations where you have a great player who is at a team that doesn't seem to break that trend, that is, with maybe 1 or 2 seasonal exceptions, a perennial struggler or indifferent or just not at the races to the degree. And so you have this body of work that is going unnoticed because he's not in a sexy market. He's not in a contending team. And yeah, of course, everyone knows Matt Stafford and sees the odd highlights, but not maybe underestimating just how good a player he is.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you're watching the games on Sky, for example, let's say you're watching whatever games that they pick. Before he went to the Rams, you were seeing Stafford a couple of times a season, and probably not late in the season.
Thanksgiving, you'd always see him.
Oh yeah, that's true. I bet for a lot of people, the most they would see of him was on that day, because the fan might be, okay, well, I'm watching my team or I'm watching Red Zone, and then that particular Thursday in November, you get to see Matt Stafford, usually against a good team, and having problems. And so I was talking to someone online a few weeks ago, a Lions fan, who was really hoping that Stafford with the Rams would beat the Bears, which, you should want that if you're a Lions fan. You want your divisional rival to lose.
Right.
And had done a screenshot of a preview that they'd read saying that Matt Stafford had an excellent record against the Bears. And I thought, what is that record? His record against the Bears is 11-9, or was with the Lions. Is now 12-9 with the Rams. So 11-9 counted as an excellent record. That's how low the bar has been
right
in Detroit during that time. And again, this isn't kind of disrespect, but if you're pointing at 11-9 being an excellent record, where it was a night that you and I were doing a Talk Sports NFL Live. Bears were beating the Lions quite comfortably, and then there were a weird set of circumstances, and somehow the Bears lost the game. If that weird set of circumstances hadn't happened, his record against the Bears would be 500. And are you then saying, oh, now it's no longer excellent? But just what that one weird win that the defense in effect had, it's an excellent record, 11-9. That tells you everything you need to know about Matt Stafford's time in Detroit. Their failures were not down to him. There was a lot of poor drafting going on. There was a lot of poor personnel decisions. There was a lot of poor coaching, but there was very, very, very rarely poor quarterback play. And Matt Stafford is one of the most underappreciated NFL quarterbacks of the last 2 decades.
I want to throw something out there. Very well said, by the way, Ben Isaacs. But I want to throw something out there, and we will move on. For our listeners, at the NC Show, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're not on TikTok. I'm going to be speaking to Ollie right after recording about that. It hasn't watched The Wire, it hasn't got us on TikTok. I mean, this is problematic, Ben, to be honest. The success is going to his head, quite frankly. What do you think out there? And hit us up on any of those platforms about the Rams and Rams fans in particular, but this is open to anybody. Let's take Mahomes out of the equation, and let's take Mahomes, Brady, Actually, no, we'll keep Rodgers in. So Mahomes and Brady are off the table, but any other quarterback, either was in the NFL or the rookie class coming through, who would you most like to see in at the Rams this season? Is there anyone more than a better fit than Stafford, or you would like to see that more? Let us know at the NC show. We'll throw that one out there and see what comes back. All right. Let's go on to Sunday Night Football. The Packers back on track, of course, although it was, and let's not turn this into a Lions bashing episode by any stretch, but of course it was a relatively favorable bounce for them to deal with the Lions after the complete carve-up mess that week one ended up being. Interestingly, and this is one certainly for Propo on our Edge Rush show, Aaron Rodgers 7-0 following a loss under Matt LaFleur. and his incidentally, his stats on top of that, 20 touchdowns, no interceptions on the back of a loss. So he likes to flex. We knew he would. It was a complete shambles week one, one of the weakest teams in the NFL, to get back into the saddle against. He had 4 touchdowns, no picks, looked relatively straightforward, certainly in the second half. What were your main takeaways from the Packers win on Monday Night Football?
None of it surprised me. There were a lot of people. It's, everyone overreacts after week one, and a score line like that and a performance like that. It wasn't just that the score didn't do the game justice. The score was completely accurate in how the Packers Saints games went.
And the score was accurate, and the moodiness as well. That's what everyone was keying in on. Oh, this is it's dysfunction. Everything we heard about in the off season's coming to roost, and it's going to be, It is a little bit dysfunctional in Green Bay, and it always will be while Aaron Rodgers is there, because Aaron Rodgers is the most powerful man in the organization, because it's the only team without an owner as such, because it's owned by the community. There isn't one person like a Jerry Jones who can just put his foot down and say, no, this isn't happening. Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is that person. And when you have someone with that sort of personality as the most powerful person in the building, there will always be dysfunction. So you've got someone like that who doesn't always respect what the head coach is doing. And that's an issue. And where you've got someone like Aaron Rodgers saying that he wants the general manager fired, things like that. That is dysfunction. And do you reckon Jerry Jones, just on that tangent, do you reckon if Jerry Jones is in the Cowboys canteen in the facility and he's asked for, extra fries and the person serving him says no, everyone has the same amount, I think Jerry Jones will respect that. I reckon he would promote that person to head of catering. Do you know what? I think you're absolutely right. I mean, Jerry Jones, we could do a whole podcast on Jerry Jones because he is absolutely fascinating.
I think it's a great idea. We should do a whole podcast on Jerry. That's a good off-season show.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, he played football at Arkansas, which is how he ended up kind of being such a fan, and the coaches that he ended up hiring when he was first there in Dallas. But yeah, do
you know what position Jerry Jones played?
I want to say he was like a lineman. They were smaller in those days.
Was he a lineman? I'm looking it up now.
Check it out. It was before my time, I'll be honest.
Yeah. I think he played with Carlson, didn't he?
There is a good ESPN SEC storied documentary, I want to say, about his time at the University of Arkansas, which you can look up on ESPN Player. We're
going to talk about Arkansas, incidentally, on College
We
Day.
are. So if you're a Razorbacks fan, this is you're getting a real treat.
Deep dive in the he was an offensive lineman. He played. I see it makes sense of what you're saying. He played with Jimmy Johnson at Arkansas as well.
Yeah.
And according to Wiki, and who would ever doubt the validity of Wikipedia, he was a member of the Kappa Sigma fraternity.
Oh, weren't we all? But yeah, you're right. He is kind of in a way, the sort of archetypal American capitalist multi-millionaire. Is he a billionaire? He probably is.
No doubt.
But I think he likes the idea of not having people kind of coat out to him and just kind of treat lots of people differently. If you watch Hard Knocks, him there about kind of making his Whataburger orders, and that if it's cold, he just would rather eat it cold than kind of heat it up. He's kind of his own sort of person, and he wouldn't he is a very player-friendly guy. I mean, especially if you're a star player, but he treats his players well. You don't see many former Cowboys players coming away criticizing Jerry Jones. And for all Jerry Jones's faults, and people want to criticize him for all sorts of reasons, I mean, yes, he hasn't won a Super Bowl in a while, but he did win 3 of them in 4 years, and he takes a massive amount of that credit. He put those teams together.
Do you think the Cowboys are contenders this season? Going back to what we said at the top of the show, I mean, you can't.
They should be
out of contention. They're contenders, but are they serious contenders?
I mean, they should win that division, which puts them in a good spot in the playoffs. And then it's, I guess, can they win a playoff game? Yes, they can. And if they win a playoff game, then they're at least in the divisional playoff. They don't have the talent that the Rams and the Bucs do, and I think those would be difficult trips.
Yeah, they get found out in the deeper waters, probably. Yeah,
but they're very talented, and this is a team that can win a playoff game. And that sounds like faint praise. Ooh, they can win a playoff game. Not many teams each season win a playoff game, so it's not a criticism. But to go back to my point, if you had someone like Jerry Jones, you wouldn't have the Aaron Rodgers dysfunction, because you'd have someone who is in charge rather than the loudest kid in the classroom being in charge because there's no teacher. So there is dysfunction at the Packers.
Can you see it unraveling, Ben?
I don't see it unraveling. I think the worst we would see is what happened against the Saints.
Well, that was pretty bad.
Yeah, but what I mean is, I don't think we're going to get anything near as bad as that. And I think they've got that out of their system now. They've had their terrible game, and I think if you're a Packers fan, you'd rather that was in week 1 and you can then move on from it rather than it happens halfway through the season.
Yeah.
Or it happens in December. If they keep winning, and I don't mean kind of go undefeated, but they should still win the NFC North. If they keep winning and they're leading the NFC North, maybe they've clinched the NFC North, it will feel like that Saints game was an aberration, which I think even at the time when I was watching it, I thought this isn't the death of this era. Rodgers isn't done. This is just one of those really, really weird things that happen. That sometimes someone can just have a really bad day at work where everything goes wrong, or you are driving somewhere and you hit the red light every single time. Sometimes those weird things happen and you just have to move on from it. And the way that Rodgers is, he will move on from it. No one has got more confidence. And I'm not saying, I know there was people saying like, oh, he's trying to tank the season. He's trying to, damage the Packers. Like, if he did do it on purpose, his motivation would be just to get himself full of more spite.
Yes.
He lives on spite and bitterness because of his draft day. That's what fuels him. Like, the idea that people would be criticizing him so much over that will just have stoked up his fires so much that he can go all the way through to February just on that. The Packers we saw against the Lions, although they weren't perfect, that's the real Packers. Forget the week 1 version. The one we saw in week 2 is far, far more like what we'll see for the rest of the season. This team's only going to drop a few games all season.
Oh, okay. So they are in the mix. This is a crucial game for them if they are indeed, as you're projecting, Ben, going to be thereabouts in terms of seeding. Because I think we're all pretty certain, even after 2 weeks, that the 49ers are a playoff team, albeit the challenge there, of course, is they're in the toughest division in the league right now. So
absolutely,
one of those teams is likely to miss out. The Packers are going to go in a bit short stacked as well. So on the line, David Bakhtiari's out. Zadarius Smith, of course, also out for this one. And that is obviously short stacking them a little bit up against a 49ers side that has...
Oh, they never have injuries, so they must be fine, right?
Not so much.
Oh, okay. This is a surprise.
Particular, I think we talked about whether you were getting a call up or maybe Ollie was getting a call up for the Ravens at one stage at running back. I wonder whether similarly the ground game is a mess for the 49ers, of course, with injuries. Well, Trey Sermon had a concussion, I think. Elijah Mitchell is a shoulder injury. Jermichael Hasty's banged up as well. So they on the offensive side of the ball are feeling it a bit. Where are we on? Let's go to Jimmy Garoppolo. And it was an ugly old win against the Eagles. And in the same way, following through, you're thinking that most teams have very bad days from time to time, and all teams have different days from time to time, and ugly wins where things aren't really rolling, but a win's a win. The rainy 1-0 Tuesday night win at Stoke. The NFL equivalent of that, I guess, was the 49ers. Was it 17-11 win against
17? That was such a weird score. Just 11.
Many 17-11s. Do you? So look, it wasn't pretty. Did you see Scott Hansen when he described the Buffalo touchdown as pretty? I thought it was great. It certainly wasn't pretty for the 49ers. But how much should we care about that? How much in particular are we looking at Jimmy G's trajectory this season? Because week 1, Jimmy G's comeback player of the year. Week 2, why didn't Trey Lance play? When's Trey Lance starting? So where are you on that one?
I used to always call Jimmy G. I used to call him the West Coast Andy Dalton. That there's not a lot of difference in the way that they play and their abilities. They're both really good guys. They're both intelligent players. They're both limited, and they're game managers. And you can only do so much with them. And the two teams they're starting for, they've got rookie quarterbacks behind them. Now, the thing is that when you've got the NFL equivalent of a kind of rainy Tuesday night against Stoke, this Eagles game was that, because before the start of the season, everyone thought the Eagles was practically like having a bye. And then they had a really good performance in week 1, and Jalen Hurts looked good. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? Pump the brakes on Jalen Hurts, because I do quite like Jalen Hurts. I think he can be an NFL starter, but I don't know how far he's going to take a team like the Eagles. He's a decent player, and that's probably what we're going to get from him this season. We're going to get some games where he's good and some where he's not so good. There were a lot of miscues from the Eagles. They looked not quite right. The 49ers just had to kind of deal with it. And in those situations, they didn't need a quarterback to produce some magic. They needed a game manager to just do the things that needed to be done. You've got some running back injuries. You just need to make some good decisions, not give the ball away. And pretty much Jimmy G just did that. He managed to grind him out.
It's a great point, and it reminds me so much of their Super Bowl run of a few years back, right? And there was all the talk in Miami, of course. All the talk was on Garoppolo in going into that Super Bowl because of what had happened in the championship game, right? And the fact that he had very little to do. And when you are being assessed to that degree, not least in contrast with Patrick Mahomes, one of the most extraordinary players of his and arguably any generation. It's a very difficult thing, but it raised the question, which I guess is a similar one that was raised a few years back in the Super Bowl and during his time there with Jared Goff at the Rams. The limitations of this player, when you have an offensive mind like Kyle Shanahan or, of course, Sean McVay in LA, are these quarterbacks holding them back? And is that what people are thinking, that Trey Lance is raw? You've told us on this show a number of times in the last year, great upside, great talent, perhaps the most raw of those 5 quarterbacks that went in the first round. But is that the expectation, that he comes in, he is going to enable the 49ers to take it to the next level in terms of range and innovation?
100%. Basically, what the Rams did from going from Goff to Stafford is what it will be going from Jimmy G to Trey Lance once Trey Lance is ready.
Right.
Jimmy G is holding back the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. And Shanahan will know that, which is why they traded up and gave up so much to get Trey Lance, who's someone that they absolutely coveted, because they know his limitations. There's no point putting Trey Lance in right now. Absolutely none. I don't think he would have won that game, whereas Jimmy G will have won it. Did win it. And
that's a really key point, that for all of the obsession, and understandable obsession, with electrifying, expansive, freewheeling offense, right? And we all want to see that. We all love to see that as fans of the game. But inevitably, it detracts from the effectiveness of a player like Garoppolo. So yes, you have the increased possibility and potential and range with a player that has more raw talent and different raw skills. But we shouldn't underestimate the fluency and efficiency of a player like Garoppolo. And as we've seen many times in the NFL, it can be enough. It can be enough to win a championship.
Yeah, and he knows that offense. You know, he's been running it for a few years. He knows it better than anyone. He is the best person in place right now to win games for the San Francisco 49ers, not Trey Lance. And that's not because he's so much more talented than Trey Lance, because he clearly isn't. But he's the right man for the job right now. And unlike, say, the Bears situation, where that's a team that isn't going to make the playoffs no matter who's the quarterback, the 49ers can make a good run in the playoffs with Jimmy Garoppolo right now. So that is what they should do. Trey Lance was picked for the future. He was not picked for 2021.
Right.
If he's playing, it means either Garoppolo is injured or the season has really kind of gone off the rails.
Unless they use him as this pinch hitter. So Shanahan was asked about that because he played 4 snaps in week 1, ran 3 times for 2 yards, and he threw, of course, the touchdown pass, right? They didn't feature at all against Philly. And Shanahan said, I never have a plan that, hey, I'm going to use him or I'm not going to use him. Just read that again.
Well,
I never have a plan. Hey, I'm going to use him or not. I think, what Shanahan means, he doesn't go into the game with I'm definitely doing this. He's going to roll the dice if he feels it.
Watching that 49ers Eagles game, there was no point where I thought, oh, do you know what the smart thing to do now is bring Trey Lance on.
Right.
Whereas against the Lions, when they used him in the situation that they were using him in, it was different. That Eagles game was it was a weird, tight game. You needed someone to just keep a handle on things. And that's what Jimmy G does. And, we've all got to try and reclaim the phrase game manager, because do you know what? If you can't keep a job, no one's really calling you a game manager. You're only a game manager if you're actually managing the bloody games in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, and sure.
He and Andy Dalton have made pretty decent careers, especially Andy Dalton. I mean, he was a starting quarterback with the Bengals for a long time and took them to the playoffs. And yeah, they didn't win a playoff game, but like I say, that's a hard thing to do. Not everyone does. But he was managing those games and racking up wins. And this is what Jimmy Garoppolo does. And unless you've got transcendent talent around those quarterbacks, then really you're only going to go so far. But let's give a little bit of respect to these game managers, because if you're a backup quarterback, you might be considered to be a game manager type, but you're not actually managing any games. All you're doing is just sitting there holding a clipboard. Garoppolo manages these games and has managed them to a 2-0 start.
Like it. Team Jimmy, definitely. I'm with you on that. Incidentally, the Athletic reporting the free agent running backs that are being tried out by the 49ers this week. See if you can guess. Can I go to throw some
oh God,
free agent running back bingo at you?
Oh man, I can't think of who the free agents are.
It's a hardcore now. When I read it, I thought, of course, but I wouldn't have got any as well. Lamar Miller.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. No,
TJ Yeldon.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah.
Duke Johnson as well. Duke
Johnson.
It's a fascinating world, isn't it? That kind of nether region of players that just bounced out of the league that still want to go. They haven't said, well, you know what? Sod it. I'm 27. I've made a few quid. I'm gonna go and open a chain of gyms back home. They I still want to go. Maybe give Frank Gore a call. I heard he wants to take up boxing. Is that Frank Gore wants to take up boxing?
Yeah, Frank Gore wants to take up boxing. He's 7.
I would love to see Frank Gore versus Paul brother. I would love that.
Oh yeah. Sign me up for that one.
Make it Frank. Happen. Let's talk Monday Night Football. Eagles, Cowboys. We've touched on both the teams, of course, and you mentioned what you think about Jalen Hurts. He was, as we expected, I guess, good against the Niners with his legs. He had 82 yards on 10 carries, which led the team, incidentally, but not hot stuff in the air. So Hurts, very much a work in progress. Defensively, the Eagles have got problems, of course, with Brandon Graham, who is he gone for the season, Graham?
I think he is. I think he is. And that's a blow. I mean, the Eagles have one of the thinnest rosters.
Of course he is. It's Achilles, isn't it? Yeah, he's done.
They've got one of the thinnest rosters in terms of kind of like sort of the depth in terms of quality in the league. And when they lose players, they've got problems. They should be very pleased to be at 1-1 right now. That's a good thing for them. The Cowboys, like Dak looks fine. And that's, I think, what you'd want from him at this point. You know, he looks fine. He looks like he can get the job done. The Cowboys were so close to being 2-0. If they'd beaten the Bucs, I think people, you know, like they're a field goal away from winning that game.
Right.
And if they'd won that game, the conversation would be, can the Cowboys win the Super Bowl? You know, it wouldn't be, are they a contender? It's, can they win the Super Bowl? And the question now is, you know, are they a contender? And it'll be very interesting to see the way that they play against the Eagles, you know, whether they kind of go for the jugular straight away because they've got the offensive weapons to do it. Are they going to, like, how much pressure are they going to put on Jalen Hurts with, like, kind of Micah Parsons, who was, you know, he was really good last week
as a pass rusher. Yeah. So we got into this with Mike. If you haven't heard the show, me and Carson dropping Mondays, looking back at the weekend's action, we talked a bit about that and how Parsons stepped up into that role. But Carson was talking, you would know this, of course, as our resident college expert, Ben, that Parsons as a backer was still rushing the quarterback quite a lot in college. So although he hadn't played his end, wasn't completely alien to him, but yeah, he is front runner already for defensive rookie of the year, right? He's looking the business. Just on this game, some interesting things to keep an eye on, including on the Eagles side, Zach Ertz, because he has tested positive for COVID, but could still start, they're saying, interestingly. And as we go through this season, we're going to have, of course, more and more of this happening where teams and lineups and rosters are affected by COVID in different ways. So that's a big loss for the Eagles if he can't start, but there is a possibility, although he's listed the time of recording on the depth chart is out, that reports suggest he could, for various reasons, because he's been double jabbed. Could still start. Amari Cooper's the big injury concern offensively for the Cowboys. It's a rib injury as well, which, same situation with Tua in Miami. You never quite know whether that's going to be, we'll tape him up and he'll go in the next week, or okay, that's a fractured rib. You're out for a good couple of weeks there. So Amari Cooper day to day. Yeah,
I mean, if anyone out there listening has had a rib injury, and I've had a couple, and the last time I basically I managed to tear the muscle off the bone. I did this doing something really glamorous. I was doing it, putting the cover on the table in the garden. Once I decided the weather's too bad, I'm putting the cover on, and I moved it, and I kind of heard a pop.
What?
It was, yeah. And I did that doing something really dull. And just the way that it affects your whole body movement. When you're a wide receiver, if you're dealing with something like that, any potential hit there, any quick twist, it can make it so difficult. So even if he's playing, there is limitation in the movement, and that's bad news for Dallas. I mean, he's going to recover quicker than me. He's got better medical care.
Isn't
he's
clear
younger.
If Amari Cooper also hurt his ribs in a garden party incident. I presume it was in either practice or in the game, but
he could have aggravated it back home.
Could have done
doing it,
but
then.
It's an issue because Michael Gallup's obviously on IR, and so that is a problem. I think I know there's depth here, but Zeke and Pollard made some hay last week, and that seems to be a pretty potent tandem. And of course, they've got CeeDee Lamb, Cedric Wilson in the mix as well. But yeah, hot take number one, it's a fundamentally different passing attack if you're taking Cooper and Gallup out of the mix, right? I mean, and absolute studs.
And the Eagles have not been giving up a lot of yards and a lot of points,
right?
Even though they've now got some problems. This is going to be a really good test for this Eagles defense. If they can keep the Cowboys to a relatively low score, even if they lose, then at the very least, people are going to have a lot of respect for the Eagles defense. This is a chance for Jalen Hurts on a big stage to show that he belongs. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to get Micah Parsons in his face a lot. And that's going to be difficult. In week 1, he made a lot of really good short passes. And then against the 49ers, he was throwing much further and generally getting a lot of incompletions. Now, the 49ers seem to just baffle Jalen Hurts when it came to kind of their pass coverage, which I'm not sure the Cowboys will do as much. I think it is going to be more of a kind of brute force approach. But Jalen Hurts is a smart guy. He's physical and he's instinctual. He hasn't got all the tools when it comes to kind of like making all those passes. But it might be that they're going to force him out of the pocket and there's going to be a lot of scrambles. Maybe they'll mix in a lot of designed runs because they've been pretty good on the ground and he's been good on the ground. So I'm fascinated by this one because if the Eagles win, then I think we're going to have to start taking the Eagles a bit more seriously. If the Cowboys win, then are they kind of marching to a relatively easy NFC East crown? We'll find out.
Okay, a quick line on a few other games from you. Let's start with your beloved Chicago Bears. They're at the Browns. Heavy dogs on the road in Cleveland.
Which is fair.
Which is fair. What's the quarterback situation, first of all?
Well, as it stands, the Bears have said that if Andy Dalton is good to go, then he's the starter, which might surprise some people, but it shouldn't. The Bears, rightly or wrongly, have got the plan that they want Justin Fields to sit and learn while Andy Dalton starts. Now, last week, Andy Dalton played better than Justin Fields. Now, that doesn't mean that Bears fans want Andy Dalton because Justin Fields shouldn't look fantastic straight away. Number one, he's a rookie. And number two, like with any of these rookies who are not starting already, when they are in practice, they are practicing with the backups. So Justin Fields in practice isn't throwing to Darnell Mooney. He's not throwing to Allen Robinson. So they don't have that connection like Andy Dalton does. I think we're going to see Andy Dalton start against the Browns. And that's going to be less exciting from a Bears point of view because people want to see Justin Fields. The season's not really going to go anywhere. It's going to be like, an 8-9 season, I would guess. So
good time to play the Browns though, because Jarvis Landry's on IR, Odell Beckham's out as well. So
if the Bears can put Baker under some pressure, and if they can confuse him with some of the fronts that they'll show him, like they confused Joe Burrow, then they could do something. The Bears forced 4 turnovers against the Bengals, and the game was still close.
Right.
It shouldn't have been, but it got close towards the end. The Bengals kept killing themselves with penalties. And if the Browns don't do that, then they'll probably establish a lead early on. And if they've got a lead, do you really fancy Andy Dalton to kind of like sling it round and engineer a comeback? Probably not.
Now, 3 more games. I want a line from you on each of them. Incidentally, on Edge Rush, which is dropping Saturday morning, depending on when you're listening to this. It might be before or after, but check the vault and it will be there. We're going to look at Chiefs, Chargers, Finns, Raiders, and Saints, Pats in detail. I know that some Raiders fans were getting in touch with us on social saying, where's the love for the Raiders? Well, tune into Edge Rush because I am Team Gruden. I am Team Carr.
Certainly should be right now.
Big on the Raiders. Hey, I was big on the Raiders. I'm pretty sure if you go back in time, you'll hear that I was big on the Raiders before.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you have been an outspoken supporter of I was going to say everything that Carr and Gruden have done. Perhaps not everything, but that they were being buried far too early. And I think you're being vindicated now.
Thanks, bud. You got my back, and I appreciate that. And we've got your back, Raiders fans, because we're going to get into that in more detail. So we're kind of splitting a lot of the week 3 action between the 2 shows in that respect. But Ben, on Jets Broncos, first of all, and Zach Wilson, oh boy, that's a tough old place to go after the game he's had up against one of, on paper anyway, one of the most effective secondaries in the game and a pretty good all-round defense. So somebody who watched a lot of him in college is somebody who very wisely suggests we mustn't get carried away. How concerned are you about what you saw from Zach Wilson last week?
Zach Wilson was terrible. Zach Wilson has been pretty bad this season. Now, I wasn't in favor of him being drafted as highly as he was drafted. Right. I felt that because and this can happen with a lot of quarterbacks, that they have one good season. Joe Burrow had one good season. Admittedly, it is one of the greatest seasons a quarterback's ever had in college football history, but it was one good season. That was the only chance that he had to start. Zach Wilson had started a lot of games for BYU, had one good season in a COVID year, which meant that their most difficult games came off the schedule. And they played cupcakes, and he played against teams that were very talent poor. The toughest game he had all season was a game against Coastal Carolina. And if you don't follow college football and you don't know who Coastal Carolina are, that is fine. I wouldn't expect you to. If you do, you will know that Coastal Carolina are pretty good. It's not like facing Alabama. And he struggled against Coastal Carolina. And that was the toughest game that he faced. I feel that he's still really raw, considering he started for like 3 years at BYU. He makes poor decisions. He doesn't see his receivers as well as he should. He's got a little bit too much confidence in his own ability when he should kind of calm it down and not try to get it through that really tight window. I'm not the world's biggest Zach Wilson fan. However, he's had 2 really bad games, but you know what? He's on a really bad team, and these things will happen. Trevor Lawrence, to me, has been as I expected as well, in that, he's not been perfect. Zach Wilson is going to struggle this season. I'm sorry, Jets fans. He's going to struggle. Even if he turns out to be your long-term starter, even if he becomes like a Matt Stafford, he's going to struggle this season because he's really not there yet. He's not really ready. And on offense, they do not have the weapon. So
the line's banged up as well, which is really bad luck for him, that Becton going out early on. Trevor Lawrence, speaking of the number 1 overall pick, the Jags at the Cards. The Cards are lighting things up. It's going to be an interesting game, I think, because the Jags are showing they can land some blows, and considerable improvement week on week, I think it's fair to say, for Lawrence. Early doors, small sample size. What are you made of his life, his start to life in the pros?
I think he's been okay at times. He threw a couple of picks. He didn't get a whole lot done. In the first few games, really, from everything I saw, it was, he's someone who does not have the talent around him. And there's a reason the Jags were picking number 1.
Same problem. Yeah.
And, I didn't agree with it, but they felt that drafting Travis Etienne, who was his running back in college, was going to be there as his kind of safety blanket. They drafted him much too highly, and then he can't even play. So things haven't really gone well in that way. And, you've got all this talk of the Jaguars having to come out and say Urban Meyer is not leaving. They did after one game because of Urban Meyer's reputation. Now, I don't think he's going anywhere, and I think Trevor Lawrence will be just fine.
It's like Andrew Neil and GB News.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same. Okay, quick line, because we've got to get out of Dodge better. Mac Jones, the Pats hosting the Saints. Again, a good time for the Pats to, depends which way you look at this. I think it's a good time for the Pats to be dealing with a jittery Jameis, and after a very promising Saints debut. Of course, it was bad Jameis last week. Pick Central, they got a lot of pressure, of course, on him, and it wasn't a fluent performance by any stretch of the imagination. Fox jumping, particularly Mac Jones is where I want to take you as our college expert. How have you? Because everybody seems very happy with Mac Jones, but he's not exactly taking too many risks, and they're not asking too much of him at the moment. Do you expect that to change? Does it not matter? Is it fine that he's dinking and dunking it and Chad Pennington style 7-yard?
I think it's fine. I think that's what Bill Belichick feels is the way to win right now. Because if you go back and look at how he was last season at Alabama, he only started one season at Alabama, and it was one of the greatest offensive seasons that a team has ever had in college football history. But he went into every single game knowing that his wide receivers were substantially better than anybody covering them. And if he wanted to just take a deep shot, chances are they would come down with it. Like we were talking about Stafford and Megatron, that, okay, well, we need to get, we want to get into field goal range. There's 40 yards to go. I'm just going to heave it up. Megatron can come down with it. like Mac Jones could do that every week with the players that he had at Alabama. But he's also really much more of a game manager type. When you put him in a situation where he doesn't have the massive advantage of all the best wide receivers in the country on his team, which he doesn't have in New England. So he's having to play much more conservatively, be kind of like doing that dink and dunk. The Chad Pennington comparison, it feels maybe like an insult, maybe not. Chad Pennington was a very serviceable guy.
Yeah, no, I was always a big Pennington fan. Yeah, it definitely wasn't an insult.
No, but like I can imagine people hearing it like, oh, Chad Pennington, he was a bit more than a game manager. Yeah. Mac Jones, I think, will be more than a game manager. His upside is nowhere near Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson can put it all together, he will be a lot better than Mac Jones. But would you rather be in Mac Jones's shoes or Zach Wilson's shoes? Would you rather be, in like, it's not like I think the Jets are absolute chaos because they are at the start of a rebuild. It's not like anybody thought, oh, they're Zach Wilson away from being a contender. This was just, he's a building block. Mac Jones, like the Patriots are always rebuilding. It's even with Brady, it was like players are going to go and we're going to bring people in and it's just going to keep rolling, maybe reloading rather than rebuilding. The Patriots are now a different animal, and Belichick will know how to use Mac Jones, and he's currently using him very effectively. And I think that's just going to continue. We're not going to see the Mac Jones from Alabama because, unless they manage to clone Randy Moss and they have 3 Randy Mosses, he can't do that in the NFL anyway.
I think Randy Moss might have spent some of the money he made in the NFL cloning himself. Or like,
I'd love that.
I think he'll be big on cryogenics. I think
straight cash, homie.
Randy Moss in 2,327. When presumably we'll be playing in space with holographic players, and you could have 11, basically taking Randy Moss, but customizing Randy Moss so he can play tight end, running back, quarterback. So it's Randy Moss would have an entire team of Randy Mosses, is what I'm saying, in 300 years in Spaceball. Yeah,
because like Randy Moss's actual son wasn't, he kind of had a cup of coffee in the NFL.
Yeah, right, of course. Yeah.
He was part of that amazing LSU offense that Joe Burrow was the quarterback for. But if we're going to get another Randy Moss, clearly we need to clone Randy because his offspring are not going to do it. There's only one Randy Moss. Basically,
there is only on that hot take. We're gonna wrap things up. At Tweets Your Bed is how you follow my good friend on Twitter, on Insta as well, right? Same handle.
It's at Ben Isaacs on Twitter. BENISAACS.
There you go. Go check it out. Go check him out. Go check out College Days as well. Of course, Ben and I are dropping that earlier on this week. So, lot of Ben coming your way this week, and plenty more coming your way this season. Great stuff, bud. Look after yourself.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
Brilliant stuff from Ben. Like I said at the top of the show, you can hear him on College Days. That is out at the moment in our pod vault. Also, Iron Mike's Wheeling and Dealing and Styling and Profiling from week 2. That dropped Monday, so that is still available to go and check out. Mike will be back this coming Monday to look back at all the week 3 action. We've got an edge rush as well. Propo and I getting you set for the weekend. A number of the games we didn't do on today's show, we will do on Edge Rush. So between them, companion pieces, it should get you completely set for all the weekend's action. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed chatting to Ben and getting set for what looks like another compelling weekend of football. Cannot wait. Enjoy, and we'll see you Monday. Bye for now.
Fellow baseball nuts, join us on the Johnny and Josh Show with my baseball brothers, where JC will
endeavor to offer some insightful analysis, and my friend Eric Jansen will
offer quirky baseball trivia. But we also have David Langell, who will
combine a high level of inappropriateness with a low level of analysis.
The Johnny and Josh Show, available to download wherever you listen to your podcasts.